promised myself I wouldn't cry. That if she was gone, I would be okay. Look at me now, worrying if she will be okay.
Edward is gone, Mother, and there is nothing you and Father can do about it. I am all you have left. So why won't you speak to me? Why won't either of you speak to me? Sage, this is not the time to be talking about your brother, especially around your father. When is it ever a good time to speak around my father? Because if you don't remember, he's never really spoken to me. I'm all you have left, both of you. And Mother, now you won't speak to me. You won't look me in the eyes. I am your daughter. Sage, this is not the time to be speaking about your brother. Now, please, leave me alone and get out of my office. Fine. That's fine with me. Don't expect me to come back when you really need me, because I will not be there. Goodbye, Mother. I'll be going.
Hon, let's go. Let her rest.
I was a nurse, stationed in England, but came back home to care for the injured soldiers during the war. There was one patient that needed my care more than the rest, because he was a pitiful man that had lost his leg in battle, but he could not accept that he needed assistance. Poor Edward. The general in charge of my patients was handsome. He took a liking to me, and I to him. Charles wooed me like no other man had, and I fell in love with his embrace. And I fell into him, not thinking of the consequences, not caring. It did not take long before I was in his bed, being fulfilled by him in more ways than one. At first he was attentive, and did not mind showing his affection towards me in front of his subordinates, showing that I was his. A month later I noticed the signs. I was pregnant. That's when I knew it was over. Charles wanted nothing to do with me or our child. After Giles had left me, I found comfort in my work and in Edward. As a friend, he offered me something that a woman in my condition can only be grateful for. He offered to be my husband so that my child would have a father and a title. I accepted. We were married quickly under conditions to be friends, but a loving family in the eyes of others. I moved into his family home as his wife, never to go back to my own. Although he could not bear children after the war, he was functional as a man, but I could not fulfill my duties to him. So he remained warm and kind towards me, waiting. Finally giving birth to my son, I saw the love in Edward's eyes. He loved my child as if he was his own. He was no longer just my child. He was ours. So I named him Eddie. Edward II. Our lives together were perfect. The man I saw at the hospital, ready to give up, was now ready to do anything for his son. Even learn how to painfully stand on one leg so that he could care for his son without his wheelchair. As Eddie aged, he began to look less like me and more like his real father. His color hair changed, and I was scared my family would be ruined. But Edward must have been blinded, because our family remained united. I noticed as my friendship with my husband was changing. I was becoming something more to him. He was falling in love with me. And he made me his wife. I never cared for his work, his company, but after I asked him to stop touching me, he became engulfed in his work and angrier at home. Wealth came in, but everything started changing. I should not have laid my eyes on the new help, but I could not help it. He was tempting. By the time the holidays came along, my interest in my family was gone. My son had priority, but my focus was on keeping my affair a secret from them, keeping Russell all to myself. I felt something for Russell that I could not explain. He was a taboo and forbidden, but I loved him with everything I could give considering my situation. Charles was my first love. Edward was my savior, but Russell owned everything within me. I slept with him one night, thinking Edward would stay at his company. Turns out, he came home early and caught us. He didn't take it well, and soon started drinking. He acted differently, and I deserved it. Edward was hurt, and all I could think of was protecting our image for Eddie's sake. It happened again. I was pregnant. This time, Edward could not stand for it, so his condition was that I could keep the child if I never saw Russell again. He would give his child his name, so that Eddie would never find out. But he promised he would never love this child, and again, I accepted, this time hating myself. I remained a good wife, but I could not stop seeing Russell, so I used whatever power I had left over Edward to distract him. I was not going to give up the man I loved so easily. After I gave birth to my children, I did not wake fast enough to stop Edward from his actions. He called Russell and told him to take my son, with him as compensation for keeping me as his wife. He said we were to keep my daughter, and my son would be Russell's to raise and care for. My daughter grew, and Eddie loved his sister dearly. Making up for the lack of love Edward promised never to give her. She was my darling daughter, but even I ignored her to keep her by my side. Sage realized as she grew up that her father never cared for her. I was never able to give her the comfort she needed. I hated myself each day as she grew, but I was thankful Eddie was there to care for his sister and replace me. Things happen to a parent is to lose your children. And one day after Edward and Sage fought, she stormed out of the house. And he ran after her, saving her. I lost my son and the only one I could care for freely. But I lost the only person who could give affection to Sage. Not long after Eddie's death, Sage found comfort in a boy she attended school with. He more than a boy from school to her. She loved him. But when I found out who he was, I could not allow it, breaking Sage's heart once again. I could not tell Sage the truth, so I called Russell and asked him to do it for me. My son, Scott, was torn to pieces and finally ended their relationship before he had made her his, thus not committing incest. Sage blamed me, fought with me, hated me, that left me alone with Edward. On our last wedding anniversary, our friendship was diminished. And the day after, he suffered a heart attack and died. I suffered after his death, because although I never loved him, and I betrayed him, he still was a good man who suffered much more than me. I was the bad woman and mother. And while he lived, he was a good father and husband to the very end, and it took his death for me to realize it. I will be forever grateful and regretful for not loving him like he did towards me. I am sorry, Edward.
Funny how I didn't know anything about her, but I assumed that she didn't care about me, and that she never loved me, but she had a really tough life, and a lot of secrets. I mean, I can't forgive her for all of it, but I can understand why, and I feel sorry for her. When she wakes up, she can be with the man she loved. I have the man I love. It's about time she was happy.